The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Game Podcast Network is brought to you by Nordic Fantasy. Sign up the promo code SGPN to claim your first-time deposit offer of Charles bonus cash on Nordic Fantasy, promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Rhythm's college football and NFL picks and projections are now live. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamebooks.com, rhythmsportsgamebooks.com/RITHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Game Podcast Network. It is roughly midnight Eastern Time on Friday, August 9th. I'm your host, always, Scott Reichel, once again going into the Montreal card for this time Friday. It's going to be the round of 16 episode, and hopefully we end up doing a lot better than we did on Thursday. Before we get into any of the actual preview for the Friday matches, do want to address a couple of things. First things first, see a comment which is definitely not wrong from Latrice Wath, who ended up saying that there's supposed to be rain all day on Friday in Montreal. Not wrong, so I'm not sure how many of these matches are actually going to be completed, but we're going to do our best to cover them, assuming they are going to be completed, but expect to see a decent amount of delay for the actual card for Friday. Not our fault, though. Got to do what we got to do. They already canceled a couple of matches for the second round, which were supposed to take place. You had the Kaboli match against Rinderknech. That got delayed when he was down 3-0 in the first. Korda and Fritz got delayed to Friday, and you also saw Kokkinakis and Hurkacz get delayed to Friday. So we've already seen some weather issues supposed to continue into Friday, so hopefully the rain is not as bad as forecasted, but it does not look good. Let's put it that way. Anyway, time to get into the actual recap of the second round, but before we get into that, I want to remind you once again to like, subscribe on YouTube. Also, a reminder to forget to review the podcast on Spotify or Apple. No matter how you consume the podcast, you can show support either by liking, subscribing, or leaving a comment, or joining the live stream on YouTube. Or if you're still listening to it audio only, you can still leave a rating and review on Spotify or Apple. Plus, a reminder to check out the SGPN merch store for the Tennis Gambling Podcast, as we have a lot of good merch. We have sweatshirts, shirts, and we also have mugs, high quality and pretty affordable. So I recommend you checking out the actual site to find something you might like. Plus, a reminder that we have some featured shows for the network this week, and the featured show is actually going to be the main show, the Sports Gambling Podcast, which did just launch the 32 NFL team previews, and we might have noticed that preseason did start on Thursday. So if you want to get the football fever kind of fully underway, you can definitely check out the team preview episodes, 32 of them, and there is a bonus catch for all of you in a positive way. If you go to each actual team preview, each episode does contain a code word. Submit the 32 code word phrase, and you could be the lucky winner who gets a $500 NFL Circa Future bet. Plus, a reminder to subscribe to your podcast, and a reminder to download the SGPN app. So, getting into the actual recap of the second round, starting off with the lock and dog picks. Unfortunately, not good. For the lock, ended up picking up a loss with Medvedev to win in straight sets at -158. Medvedev ended up struggling early on. Fokina did a good job of actually coming to the net more than I thought he would, and he ended up winning the match outright, which is kind of surprising, as he was 0-4 lifetime against Medvedev. He had won the last two meetings in straight sets, and Fokina was just very solid. Maybe it's the haircut, got rid of the man bun, and he actually played well. Point is, though, Medvedev seemed a bit out of sorts all match long, and he was broken early in the first set. Then he broke back, and then he got broken again to lose the first set. Then he ended up winning the second set 6-1. So you figured he kind of regained his composure and then got buried in the third set. So really just a weird match in general where Medvedev did not get anything going. I believe it was the first time all year Medvedev lost his first match at an event. I think he was either 11-0 or 12-0, and now he ended up losing to Fokina. Good win for him, though, but it didn't matter for us because we lost in the first set. So I picked up a loss there. For the dog, kind of annoying, because we had the over 2.5 sets in the Arnaldi and Khachanov match, was really torn between the over 2.5 sets and the Arnaldi money line. And unfortunately, I chose poorly, as Arnaldi did win in straight sets. However, both sets were very competitive. He won both sets 7-5. So he had some chances there, but unfortunately did choose poorly, as we thought it'd be a bit of a marathon. And it was, but not to the extent we needed, as Arnaldi did win in straight sets. Kind of kicking myself for not taking the money line at a better price. So either way, apologies there. To get into the actual recap for the matches, once again, really not a good day. Arguably the worst day that we've actually had on the show for a while, arguably all year. One of those days, it just seemed like an uphill climb, and just could not really find a rhythm for most of the matches on Thursday. To get into the actual details surrounding that, yeah, really not. I didn't get much right. I got the first match right, though. I thought Borges was live against Doumbert. Did like the over in that one with the over 2.5 sets. That worked out. Ended up losing in the Fokina match, as he ended up beating Medvedev outright. Thought Tsitsipas would beat Nishikori in straight sets. That did not happen, as Nishikori did win in straight sets. Good for him. Happy to see Nishikori doing well. Thought Tsitsipas would look sharper. He did not, and you saw Nishikori kind of just dominate when it comes to the long rallies. And he did a good job of actually being aggressive against the topspin backhand. For Tsitsipas, he came forward a lot, and he was able to put away points relatively easily. You saw Paul lose to Nakashima in 3 sets. Nakashima's done well historically against Paul, and it just seemed like Paul ran out of gas as he ended up getting injured in the 3rd set. And then at that point, it was really just a wrap. So nice win there for Nishikori. Nice win for Nishikori and Nakashima. We'll see if they can keep it rolling here on Friday. Rublev beat Etcheverry in straight sets. Looked competitive early, and then Rublev took over the 2nd set. Zverev killed Thompson, 6-1, 6-1. Once again, thought Thompson would kind of hang in there. He did not, as Zverev killed him. And it just seemed like Thompson, who had been in good form, wasn't awful. I just thought Zverev was incredible. I thought Zverev played basically a perfect match. Same with Dimitrov, who ended up only dropping 1 game against Hijikata in the entire match. It's a good win for him. Arnaldi beat Kashanov in straight sets. Ruud beat Duckworth in 3. Sinner beat Chorich in straight sets. That was pretty much expected. Rune ended up beating Busta in straight sets. Thought it'd be a bit more competitive. It was not, as Rune just ran through him, as he ended up only dropping 4 games in the entire match. Tabilo beat Sonego in straight sets. Did not see that coming either. And Shelton ended up losing in straight sets to Papiron. Did not get that right either. So once again, just a really bad day, which happens when you cover tennis rounds all the time. Unfortunately, though, it was a very bad round for us. So hopefully it didn't entail too much of my plays from yesterday, and hopefully we do a lot better here on Friday. Either way, I see a couple of comments. It's talking about how the heat's a real factor. It's kind of a mix because the heat's a factor, and there's also a lot of rain going on, so it's kind of tough to fully get rhythm when you see a lot of heat and your matches get delayed and having to continue them later on. So overall, definitely the conditions have been something to monitor. I would say the heat was a lot worse in Atlanta or in DC compared to Canada. So if you want to talk about what's, I'd say, better or worse, the heat might be an issue. It's not as bad for the players that also played in Atlanta and in DC. I think the heat was definitely worse there. Also see a comment from Manzi Man. Sorry if I'm butchering the pronunciation. Thanks. Appreciate it. Welcome to the channel. Once again, not a great round for us, and we'll try to do better here in the round of 16. Also see a message from Cayetano telling me that Shelton does it again. Kind of crazy when you think about it, that Shelton's ranked basically within the top 15, and I feel like most people don't think he's actually good, which is kind of weird, because you think about Shelton's overall season, and he's been pretty much a non-factor. He lost to Manarino in that 5-set marathon in the Australian Open. He won that clay event in Houston, and that's basically it. He hasn't really done anything worth a damn for the last couple months, and he's still in the top 20, and he's basically fringe top 15. A lot of points he was defending from last year, I guess, but damn, he has not done anything this entire season. And we'll see if Shelton can pick it up a bit. A couple of good matches, once again, did get delayed with the Fritz and Korda match and the Hurkacz and Kokkinakis match. So if you want some extra second-round action, you have that as the first couple matches of the card on Friday. Anyway, time to get into the actual preview for the 3rd round. But before into that one, reminder once again that we are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy because they just launched Underdog Streaks, which means if you hit your first 2 pick'em entries, then you can go streaking. If you get an 11-0 run, you can win 1,000 times your money. Plus, Best Ball Mania is now live with $15 million in prizes, and they also just added a new best ball, college football. If you want to join the college football contest, you can now use specials and boosts on all flex entries. I'll probably end up using something involving, what do I want to go with here for the... I'll do the gold medal game for Team USA versus France. I mean, if Gobert lowers are still there, take it, because I haven't seen a single book post anything. I believe he played 4 minutes or 5 minutes in that game against Germany. I could see Wemby struggling, though, for his points. I don't mind the lower on Wemby, maybe, for the final. He's not shot the ball well for the last couple games. Either way, though, sign up the promo code SGPN. Claim your special pick in your first-time deposit offer as far as bonus cash on Underdog Fantasy. Promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace for the MLB, which makes getting tickets easier and faster. Price in the Game Time app actually go down closer to game times. If you do want to get some great last-minute deals, they have you covered. They also have all-in prices, Houston receipt, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time does take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets, and my favorite feature is the image of seat views, which means that if you want to actually buy a seat before you hit the actual button to spend your money, you can actually get a preview of what your view would look like if you would purchase said seat. So you know exactly what view you're going to get. You can avoid any obstructions or any bad views. Definitely something that I use whenever I do use the Game Time app. A reminder, though, that you should download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code SGPN. For $20 off for purchase, or again, terms apply, create an account, redeem code SGPN for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished recapping the second round. Time to move on to the third round, or the round of 16. Now, full disclosure, I do not have a ton of lines on the matches. I have some, so we're going to make the best of what we have, but I did have to kind of dig to find some plays that I actually liked for the card because we were missing some lines. So keep that in mind. Either way, let's get into the format. A reminder, not going to cover every match, but going to cover most of them, so keep that in mind. Starting off, we are going to skip the 2 second-round matches that were not completed, that did not start yet. So moving on to the Fokina and Arnaldi match. For this one, you have basically an even money line pricing. It's about -110 on both sides, and you're looking at what should be a pretty competitive matchup. Now, looking at Arnaldi's path, well, good against Khachanov, who's been in bad form recently, and he looked pretty good against McDonald's, but that did go to 3 sets. Now, you're looking at Fokina, and he's been solid. Beats Fulin in straight sets, beat Medvedev in 3, and he was fine in Washington. Lost to Kaboli in 3 sets, who made the final, and he had 5 match points in the breaker. So he has been in better form recently. Shout out to him for cutting the man bun, because I think he looks better without it. But point is, I do think that Fokina right now is in better form. Maybe you could argue it's a very good sell high spot off Fokina winning a match against Medvedev, and you're kind of waiting for the ticking time bomb that is Fokina to self-destruct again. But I think Fokina right now is in better form, and I do think beating Medvedev is more impressive than beating Khachanov at this stage in his current form, because he's been really bad for the last couple of months. We saw him lose to Hong in straight sets. We saw him lose in Wimbledon pretty early on. Point is, not really a big fan of how Khachanov's played, so even though it is a good win for Arnaldi, do think I've been more impressed with how Fokina's looked. So I'll lean to him in this one, but I am going to lean to the over. I think this has really just the perfect makings of a 3-set marathon. Arnaldi goes to marathons all the time, with the exception of the match yesterday, which was 7-5, 7-5. Fokina, though, has gone to at least... Fokina has not won in straight sets in 4 of the last 5 matches. So I do think you're looking at what should be a pretty competitive matchup, a bit of streaky play in there, and probably the over. I would lean to Fokina, but I am going to lean to the over 2.5 sets as well. Give me what should be a very close matchup on paper, and I think that's going to play out that way on the courts here on Friday. Moving on to the next match, looking at a matchup between Borges and Nishikori. For this one, interesting line, because after Nishikori beat Tsitsipas, and you ended up seeing Borges win a marathon against Humbert, probably would have thought that Nishikori would have been favored, but he's not. You're looking at the price right now, and you can see Borges at around -138, give or take. You can see Nishikori at around +120, give or take. Now, a couple reasons why I do think Borges is favored. Main reason is based on the back-to-back spot for Nishikori. We know he's not played many matches recently in singles. He has not played singles matches on consecutive days for a long time. Basically, August of last year, or it was July maybe. So basically a full calendar year since the last time he's played a singles match on back-to-back days. So there is some concern about fatigue, but he really beat Tsitsipas comfortably. So I feel like you can kind of make the argument that Borges, even though he did win in 3 sets against Humbert and against Kekmanovic in the first round, you could argue Nishikori is in better form right now, and the only concern is the lack of, I'd say, evidence that he can handle the back-to-back spot. But he really didn't play much against Tsitsipas because he kind of dominated the majority of that matchup. So I think I am going to expect a competitive matchup. I don't mind the over. Borges is better than I thought he was when the year started. I don't think he's an amazing player. I think Nishikori can take him, and I think beating Tsitsipas is a very good win. So I am going to go with the over in this one. I can understand why Borges is favored. You can argue it's a trap line, because Nishikori looks a little bit too easy based on the price. But the main reason, I think, is just the lack of, I'd say, evidence about his overall stamina and how quickly he can recover. I've mentioned this involving older players in the past, like Wawrinka, Gasquet, all these other guys, Agut, for example. You can back them early in tournaments if they have some time to prep, but if you actually have to play multiple matches in a row with no time off, Nadal, for example, they're in trouble. So maybe Nishikori is going to struggle, but I think that he's played good enough tennis and he's been efficient enough with his tennis to potentially have some energy left in the tank. I'll lean to the over. I think I am going to lean to Nishikori in this one. I just think that the price is a bit off to me. I would have Borges probably like -120, -115. I see it pretty close for me, so I don't mind the over, but I do think going to 3 sets in each of the first 2 rounds isn't going to help the actual stamina for Borges. So I'm going to lean to Nishikori, but I am going to lean to the over as well. Moving on to the next match that we're going to talk about, looking at a matchup between Once again, we are missing some lines here. Going to look at a matchup between Dimitrov and Papiron. So for this one, Dimitrov played basically a perfect match in the first round, as he dropped one game in the entire match against Ichikata. As for Papiron, he looked very good as well, as he beat Shelton in straight sets with a breaker, but he did get the job done. So Papiron's played 2 matches here, beat Shelton in straight sets and beat Makic. Makic is a good win. I like him as a player, but he also played a lot of doubles in the Olympics, so I do question how tired Makic was for this event. But either way, point is you're looking at the head-to-head, and they are a bit dated. Both meetings were in 2021. Dimitrov has struggled in the head-to-head. They faced off in the U.S. Open in 2021, and you saw Papiron win the first 2 sets in breakers, and then he was up 4-0, and Dimitrov retired. Faced off in Melbourne that same year, about 7 months prior, and you saw Dimitrov win, but it did go to 3 sets. So pretty interesting because Papiron's been in good form, but Dimitrov's only played 1 match since basically Wimbledon, and he played basically perfectly. So the question is, do I think he's going to look that sharp again, or do I think Ichikata is that bad? I think Dimitrov's going to look good. Of course, I gave him out to win the tournament, so I felt pretty good about his overall skill set on these courts. I do think Papiron's going to make it interesting. Maybe a breaker. I think Dimitrov should win if I had to just go based on what I've seen so far from the last couple of months. Papiron is still pretty volatile. When he's solid, but when he's bad, he can be very bad. And Dimitrov can definitely extend rallies and wait for unforced errors to unfold from Papiron. I think I would probably lean to Dimitrov to win the first set and the match, which is around -140, which I think is pretty interesting because Dimitrov is a pretty big favorite. So if you want to talk about trying to find ways to reduce the juice, Dimitrov was like -270. So if you want to find a way to reduce it, I don't mind winning the first set and the match at like -142. Now, the issue is in the meetings in the head-to-head, it has been very close. You could argue that Papiron can win the first set, but it's mostly trying to actually extract value for -275. If you want to go straight sets at like +110, I don't hate it, but I do think that it could be competitive based on the head-to-head. So I think for that reason, I am going to lean to Dimitrov to win. Maybe it goes 3, but give me Dimitrov to win the first set and the match at around -142. Moving on to the next match on the card. We are going to skip the Sinner match because he's supposed to beat Tabilo, and he's like a -1400 favorite. I'm not going to bother. Looking at the matchup, though, between Nakashima and Rublev, for this one, you have what should be a pretty competitive matchup. Rublev is around -200, and Nakashima is around +170. For the head-to-head, to mention the history between them, it is tied 1-1. They faced off on clay this year, actually, and Nakashima won in straight sets in Barcelona, 6-4, 7-6. Faced off in San Diego about 3 years ago, and Rublev did win 6-2, 6-1. Now, Rublev, we know, has been in shambles for the last couple months, and after losing to Tiafoe in Washington, he looked good as he beat Echeverry in straight sets. As for Nakashima, he's been solid too, as he ended up going through qualifying, and he has only dropped 1 set. That was Tommy Paul in the second set on Thursday. So he beat Chapo in straight sets, beat Paul in 3 sets, beat Harris. That's Brandon Harris, or Billy Harris. I mean, that's the worst version. That's not Lloyd. Point is, though, he's been solid. So I know that Nakashima can be a bit of a head case, and I can't really trust him. Same thing with both players, though. Like, I have a hard time trusting Rublev. I have a hard time trusting Nakashima. If Rublev turned a corner, then I would pick him, but I don't know if he's actually turned a corner. So I think I have to lean to the over. Like, I don't feel great about it, but I can see a breaker in here. That wouldn't shock me. Both guys are pretty good at serving, and I thought that Nakashima did a very good job serving against Paul. So I think for this one, I'm going to lean to the over. I think Rublev's going to win, but I can't trust either guy, and I'm not going to lay -200. So I'll lean to the over in this one. Give me a breaker and maybe a potential 6-4 on the other end. If it's 22.5, maybe you can look for a couple of breakers or a 3-setter. So I am going to lean to the over in that one. And for the last match, we're going to talk about a match between Rune and Zverev. Zverev is around -270, and you're looking at Rune being around +220, give or take. For the actual head-to-head, it is tied 1-1. Face-off this year in the French Open. Zverev did win in 5 sets. Faced off in Munich in 2022, and Rune did win that one in straight sets. Now, Zverev played basically a perfect match against Thompson, who was in good form entering the event, and he won 6-1, 6-1. Rune's been fine, as he ended up going to 3 against Agut. Pretty bad performance there, but Rune has tended to be a bit of a slow starter in the first round of events, and then he picked it up against Busta as he won 6-1, 6-3. For this one, I think I have to link to Zverev. I just think that he looked that good against Thompson that I am going to buy into the hype of it, and I think that he is the better player. We saw them face off in the French Open. It was close. It went 5. But I do think Zverev is the more consistent player. And I do think that even though Zverev can have some mental lapses, Rune definitely has more of those. So based on just the overall talent and the overall, I'd say, mental toughness, I know Zverev is up there for weaker mindsets, but I think he's actually mentally tougher than Rune. So I am going to lean to Zverev in this one. However, kind of similar to the Dimitrov match, I don't want to lay 275, and I really don't trust the actual straight sets price at plus money. So I think I am going to take Zverev to win the first set and the match at around minus 140. Same idea. If I'm picking the guy to win, I might as well try to reduce the juice by about half. So I'll find a way to convert a minus 260, minus 270 favorite to minus 140. I think Rune's been fine, but facing off against Busta, who had played 3 sets earlier that same day against Kokkinakis, who ended up losing, of course, to Rune in the first round, and then beating Busta, who I know I thought had a shot, but in reality, he was off a 3-setter in the first round, and he barely has played any tennis for the last couple months on the ATP level. Not exactly the greatest competition for Rune so far. It's a massive step up in competition. I think that Zverev comes out firing, and I think he'll get the job done. So that's going to be my main thoughts for that match. Maybe it goes 3, but I think that Zverev is going to win. So I'll find a way to reduce the juice there by making it a more affordable price. That's going to wrap it up, though, for the round of 16. Time to get into the actual lock and dog picks for the show. Before we do that, one once again. We are brought to you by Rhythm because football season's here, and college football and NFL models are now live on Rhythm. Create your own betting model, or let Rhythm do it for you. You can decide what stats matter to you, and Rhythm can help you build a custom model around it. Or just let Rhythm and its predictive model do the heavy lifting. Rhythm also uses AI projections from MIT data scientists. They also have you covered already for NFL Week 1 and college football Week 0. Claim your setting for your child today by going to sportscampus.com, rhythmsportscampus.com/RITHMM. We're also brought to you by Circuit Survivor and Circuit Million. Circuit Sports is back with Circuit Survivor and Circuit Millions, giving away $16 million in guaranteed prizes. Don't have a trip booked yet for Las Vegas for football? Ultimate Cuts weekend's a great time to go. Hang out with Ryan and Sean and enjoy some of the open bar events in the world of the sportsbook from August 22nd through the 24th. Use promo code SGP15 to save you 50% off your hotel room for sign-up weekend. And a reminder, sign up in person at Circuit Sports between now and December 7th, or use a proxy to play from anywhere. We also have a deal with a proxy. Go to proxy.footballcontest.com to save you $50 with the promo code SGP. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished covering the Friday card for the round of 16 in Montreal. A reminder, most of these matches might not conclude because there's supposed to be a lot of rain. So keep that in mind. But assuming everything goes well with the weather report, we are going to talk about the lock and dog picks. For the lock with this show, I think I am going to go back to the last match, actually, between Zverev and Rune. Maybe I was fully persuaded by how good Zverev looked on Thursday. But in a day where a lot of top-seeded guys lost, Zverev shined and he looked amazing. So with that being the case, I am going to go with Zverev to win the first set and the match at around minus 140 on DraftKings. For this one, Zverev only lost 2 games in the entire match. Thompson, I know, is occasionally an idiot, but he was in good form. Thinking of the last couple events he was in, made the final in Atlanta, lost in Ishioka, but that was still a 3-setter, could have won that match. Faced off against Korda in DC, ended up losing in straight sets. Korda eventually won the title. So you're looking at Thompson looking sharp for the most part, losing to 2 guys who just so happened to eventually go on a title run, and he was in good form. And Zverev killed him like it was nothing. So I like the fact that Zverev looked very sharp. I think that his game translates well to the courts here. And Rune has been good as well, but not as good. And he also has faced off against weaker competition. Thompson in 2024 is better than Busta and is better than Rune. And Zverev went through him like it was nothing. So I do think Rune, despite looking good, has a massive step up in competition, beating Busta and Agut is nice. Now you got to kind of step up and beat a top 5 guy in the world. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be fun, but I think Zverev's better right now. And we saw him beat Rune on clay about a couple months ago. So I do think Zverev has some value. He's about minus 250, so I am going to try to reduce that a bit. But the fact he's that big of a favorite tells me that the odds makers are kind of buying into Zverev hype as well. So I am going to go with Zverev to win the first set and the match at minus 140 on DraftKings as my lock. For my dog, I am going to go to the Arnaldi and Fokina match. And even though we did lose in this exact same market on Thursday, going to run it back. Going to go with Arnaldi over 2.5 sets against Fokina at around plus 125. So Arnaldi did beat Kashanov in straight sets. Both are very competitive, though, 7-5, 7-5. He has still dropped at least 1 set in 8 of the last 10 matches. Fokina did go to 3 sets against Medvedev, and that's not a surprise because he has lost at least 1 set in 4 of his last 5 matches. So both guys do drop sets all the time. Kashanov has still not been in great form, and Arnaldi did win, but it was still very competitive. And Fokina, we saw in the Medvedev match, looked good in the first set, then he punted the second set, and then he dominated the third. I can see a similar story here, either a couple of competitive sets or maybe you see just lopsided sets back and forth. But I think plus 125 is a good price for what should be a pretty competitive matchup on paper. Both guys are about minus 110. So it's basically a coin flip. I'll back that narrative. Give me the over 2.5 sets in what should be a war. So once again, the plays for the Friday card, the lock's going to be on Zverev to win the first set and the match of minus 140. For the dog, I am going to go with Arnaldi and Fokina over 2.5 sets at plus 125. A reminder back once again for the quarterfinals in Montreal. We'll see how many matches get completed on Friday, and then I'll kind of adjust our actual schedule for the quarters. But until next time, find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio, find me on the NBA show, find me on the MLB show, and until then, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.